Hi, my name is Ed Hubbard. I'm your happy-go-lucky teacher tonight. Today we're going to talk about this is part of my series called Magick For The Masses. What I mean by that is just magic people can use for everyday life. It's just stuff and sort of thing. Just a little bit of background about myself. I am founder of one of the founders of a school called Witch School, which is an online school that teaches people all over the world about magic and Wiccans and all sorts of different things. I don't take myself overly seriously. I don't think any of you should take me overly seriously either. Take everything. I always warn people that you have to make up your own mind about everything, including what I have to say. Having said that, I'm going to give you the best information that I can. Feel free to just ask questions. I'm very informal in this aspect. I'm not like one of these wait until the time. I want you to go ahead and just ask questions as you want to. And we'll begin. Today's Magick for the Masses is love and lust. Love and lust are the two most powerful elements in America today. Everybody loves love. And how dare I speak even about something that has over 1.2 million different definitions in the world. There's all sorts of flavors of love. We always talk about it. You always hear about different flavors of love. And people go, oh, that's a big subject. But love ultimately, in the world of magic, means just being able to have a feeling of giving to another person. And that means giving. It means giving unlimitedly. You hear the term unconditional love. Well, what in the heck does that mean? Well, unconditional love is one of those little fantasies that we all live with, meaning that we don't have conditions to our love. That we give it so freely to people that we don't expect anything back. Okay, that would be like opening your wallet and letting anyone take money out of it and never expecting to see anything for it. It sounds cool, but at the end of the day, that idea comes out and people get resentful of it. So it's obviously not just giving of yourself so much that you never get anything back. Unconditional love, at least for our definition tonight, is the type of love that you give out without preconceptions, without rules, and that you then get something back. Meaning, when you enter into sort of the idea of love, the more rules you have, the harder it is to get to love. It means like if you think that you have to be, I have a friend, 42 years old, who barely dates because he has these very tight rules of who he could possibly love. It has to be a redhead. It has to be a Jewish redheaded girl. Very difficult to find. And I literally mean this. And then anything else doesn't seem to live up to his standards. And it doesn't live up to his standards. So he doesn't have an inkling of what unconditional love is. And today he's still a bachelor. And yet he talks about, oh, I want to get married and have kids. These sort of things. So if you set up a lot of preconditions to what love is, then you're going to find it harder to find love. So that's what we talk about unconditional love. It's kind of setting up not the conditions of love, but you have to ask what you want in love. Now, lust. Lust is a whole different question, and lust is the biggest motivator today in America. Lust is everywhere. Lust is in our commercials. Why do we put bikini-clad girls in front of a car? Because, well, they want to convey the idea that lust for the woman, lust for the car, and you convey this sort of thing. And that's actually called image magic. And one of the things they do in lust, in love, is that the idea of taking one thing, a beautiful girl, clad in a bikini, selling toothpaste. If you use this toothpaste, you're going to get this girl. Doesn't matter if it's true. Or they take you in the case of that. Or beef chunky guy, Axe haircut. If your guy's using Axe body rub, you're going to want to be all over him. The idea is that they're going to convey this idea of symbolic magic. And one of the things about image magic and symbolic magic, and there's a little bit of a difference between the two, but the difference between those two things is that in image magic is you take an image of something that you want and convey it across the board. Voodoo dolls is an image. And you put a person's face on it and you stick pins in it. That's symbolic magic, because you're asking for what is within to be without. What is as above, so below, so within, so without. It's kind of this idea of, if I want money, so you put $1 at an altar to hope to get more money. You throw pennies in a wishing well to get wishes. This is all the act. Now that is called symbolic magic. To do one thing to get something bigger or bolder. And you have to accept, if you believe in magic, you have to accept the universe has an intelligence that we may not understand. But it is intelligent, that it listens. The universe listens to you, and it will actually do what you ask. One of the most common things that you have is telephones. How many times have you thought about a friend, and then the phone rings and it's that friend at the other line? It's one of the most common examples, but everybody's had that kind of experience, it looks like. And so that's kind of making a connection. You thought of a friend, the telephone rings, you talk to a friend. The universe kind of listened. Somehow it triggered a switchboard that you didn't see. Or you said, I needed money. You know, I need to make my rent. And suddenly a check comes in the mail that you didn't expect. You ask for it, it comes in, it happens. Ultimately, magic is only the act of asking the universe for what you want. And hopefully getting it. The difference between magic and a prayer is that magic, you're using your own will and asking the universe. A prayer is asking God, deity, male, female, it doesn't matter what type it is, but it's just asking that outside force. The biggest difference between magic and a prayer is that act of who's going to bring it into it. I believe in an intelligent universe. My universe is intelligent. It thinks. The planet itself has a database. People always laugh at me and say, we have a database on this planet. We've had a computer. The Earth acts like its own computer. What do you think all these dinosaur bones and fossils are for? Kind of a database, because it's telling us what's happened in the past. Now we know. Petrified wood. If you take petrified wood, we could tell you the weather of that tree. They're taking thin lines of this sort of thing, and they're able to actually tell you the weather of it. Tree rings on a tree, both petrified wood and regular wood. Tells us the weather, tells us the conditions of it. So everything we do around here has an intelligence that we may not always perceive. Human beings are only one form of that intelligence. And if you can accept that we are one form of intelligence, we're an active force of intelligence. We are now a changing force of intelligence. We can actually change our environment. Something that's very different. Lots of the other creatures on the earth which have a great deal of intelligence don't actually change their environment. They have to adapt and survive. But a lot of them don't go actively out of it. Now that's not so much true as they think. Chimpanzees are starting to use tools. We're starting to find out a lot more primates are using more and more tools out there. So they're beginning to change their environment. I just read about 2 weeks ago, they found a thing about dolphins. They're now starting to think that dolphins actually have homes, that they actually move treasures, and they keep them in sort of like these little plates on the ocean floor that they protect. Little things. They didn't believe this for a long time, but they're now finding it out. They're also finding out that dolphins may actually be farming. They're keeping sharks out of certain areas of water where they get their food. They keep other predators out of their food areas. This is a relatively new discovery that they're making, that they're doing this. And we're able to do that because we're now recording more information. And understand, information is being recorded at a much greater pace than we ever have. In 1 year in the United States, 1 year on Earth today, we're accumulating information at a rate the human race has accumulated all the way up to last year. In 1 year. That's how much it is. We're talking about petabytes of information. But the Earth has always been gathering this information. Magic is one of those ways that we tap into a consciousness that is intelligent and that has knowledge. You hear about Akashic records. You hear about all of them. Akashic records. I don't know. How many of you have heard of Akashic records? Or
Akashic?
Akashic. I have a Chicago accent. I'm so sorry. Me and Mary Daly suffer from the same speech impediment, public education. But yes, Akashic records, and that is this idea that everything that has ever existed, everything that has ever been written, everything that has ever been thought, is stored in this place that we cannot tap into. It's what psychics tend to use, claim to use. Ever dream of a book that you may not know? You ever dream of a book and reading a book? They say that you're touching the Akashic records. And so we have this ability to tap into this great energy. And so what happens is that eventually we want to control our environment. We're human beings. We can't help it. There is no such thing as a human being that doesn't try to control their environment to a small degree. Because every day we get dressed. Every day we go out and eat food. We do things to make sure we survive. We're not just sitting out in the woods somewhere, grubbing up, just hunting down our food with our bare hands and doing so. We're actually pretty ill-equipped to do that. We don't have any claws, our teeth are kind of blunt. Yeah, there's a lot more. If we didn't have our intelligence, we'd probably be a lot lower on the food chain. And at one time we were, that sort of thing. But in that process, we had to form communities. We had to find ways to cooperate. And one of the best ways to do so was through emotions. Emotions are the fire of the soul. Intelligence is the fire of the mind. And that is where your thought comes from. It's fire. Think of thought as fire in your mind. It burns. You have to get your thoughts out. You have to get it on paper. You have to talk about it. You have to think about it. Emotions are the fire of the soul. And that is what your passion is. And magic requires energy. Magic is focused energy. And one of the things about focused energy is that you got to know what it is. And love is that one emotion that we all crave. And in the old days, I'm meaning last year, before we even understood these sort of emotions, before psychologists came along, before psychiatrists came along, we knew about love. The two emotions we knew about love, and it's what they call its opposite, hate. Trust me, hate and love are not opposites. They're kindred. The opposite of love is emptiness. The opposite of love is disdain, disconsideration. Because it is the opposite of it. It means there's nothing there. Nothing. Because hate is a form of love. You so don't want this into your universe. You want to love your universe so much you want to remove this thing from the universe. They come from the same place in the heart. They come from the same place in the mind. So people always think love and we've been taught love and hate are the opposites, but they're not. They're both really powerful energy and fuel. And love and hate is a form of passion to despise somebody. You become entrenched with them. If you think about how you hate people, you don't stop thinking about them. You want to get back at them. You want to do something to them. Well, what is love? Love is you want to be with them. You want them in your life. You want to entertain them. So understand those strong emotions are there. In fact, the thing that's least like love, not knowing somebody's there, making them ghosts. So we have this sort of thing. So we have these strong emotions. Anger is another emotion, very tied into love. You did something to violate my rules. And how can I continue loving you if you're going to continue to violate my rules? In fact, the majority of our actions comes down to love. And all magic begins with one type of love. Self-love. You're going to hear this, and there's lots of people in the world who don't love themselves, who do go out and act and even behave as if they love other people. So self-love is not necessarily a requirement to love other people, but it's a requirement to enjoy it. Simply put, if you don't love yourself, at least a little bit, and I'm not talking about just You know, and I'm not just talking about, you know, oh, I'm a little heavy, or I don't like that mole on my face, or I don't like my haircut. We're talking, you know, everybody's got some of those emotions, but if you don't like yourself, if you really think that you're not a good person, then it's going to be very hard for you to accept that somebody else can love you. A bond that's broken, one of the most important love relationships we get is that bond at birth. Within moments, a chemical reaction happens to the brains of the newborn. Have you ever heard about ducks following the first person they see? Mm-hmm. It's called bonding. It's called psychological bonding. It's called psychogenesis of the mind. It's the first thing out. And that little ducky goes, okay, that's my mother. It's a survival instinct, and I had to follow it. And if you take away the mother and put your human being there, what they do with osprey and all sorts of things, then the animal will say, this is the person I must depend on to survive. Love is all about depending on people to survive. When the baby is born, it smells, it tastes, though the taste buds aren't fully formed there. It smells, it tastes, even though it doesn't understand all these jumbles, it feels, and it begins to form, saying, this is the person that's going to protect me. Now this is happening at a very low level. I mean, it doesn't even understand the baby doesn't even understand all this, but it makes that bond. And everybody says the bond between a child and its mother is magical. What happens in that relationship is going to reflect everything else. But again, what does all this have to do with magic? Well, how you feel tells you how your magic's going to work. Because ultimately, magic is about will. Okay? So, in order to be able to have love in the magical sense, love in a personal sense, utilizing magic either for yourself or for other people, you have to understand that these are emotions that you have, that they form very young, protective emotions, and then you learn to attach it to other things. And that's why there's so many definitions of love. There's the love of a candy bar. There's the love of a soda pop when the kid's young. There's the love of a toy. There's the love of a security blanket. There's the love of your best friend down the street. There's the love of the little boy and little girl that takes a bath with you. And we get all these sorts of relationships in our lives that we call love. But all of these pale in contextual to the one type of love that everybody keeps looking for. Soulmates. The one thing that makes you whole. Now, I'm not going to get into the idea that a man and a woman have to be together, or that it's two men that can be together, or two women, or even it's a whole group of people. I believe soulmates are people who make each other whole. And I don't think it just has to be a couple. I know a group of people who make themselves whole, and there's like 5 of them in this relationship. It's called polyamory. It means it's a group marriage. So when I talk about soulmates, I'm not talking about just necessarily being that. But when it happens, it's a collision of 2 forces, sometimes more, that come together and make themselves whole. But how do we get to there? Self-love. The will of the love, having that sort of thing. And you have to allow yourself to have it. You have to have the will for it. Okay. Having said that, how many people believe the number 1 thing that a witch is asked for is a love spell? Number 2, money. Money comes second to love. There are so many people who would rather love than to be rich. Would you believe that? America is a little worse than other countries. A lot more in Europe, love is above everything else. They're willing to die for love. Most people aren't willing to die for money. So you get this powerful force. How does it use it? Well, if you believe that love is sacred, I don't know how many people believe love's sacred. There's this sort of idea of sacred love. And that's one of the most powerful forces that have been sublimated in our modern society. Sacred love is the idea that love is blessed, that love is power. Today it's been sublimated almost exclusively to religion. the love of God, the love of Jesus Christ. And for people who are not of that persuasion, the love of, the gods of in Hinduism, the love of the gods. And people kind of said that sacred love is only between me and God. But the Romans had temple prostitutes to represent a living form of God, a goddess. That was considered sacred love. Freely given, freely accepted. So understand that sacred love really means love so strong that you would give up your own life for it, that it means more than your own life for it. This is love so big that you would change your life for it. Love so deep into your soul that you cannot do anything but love. That is unconditional love. Now let's get to lust. Lust is a biochemical reaction in the body that says, I'm attracted to this person and I want to procreate. Base it is. We need to get together so that we can get together so that we can impregnate you. Because we have intelligence, it doesn't have to make sense that some of the love relationships we're making actually don't have anything to do with that. But deep down in the soul, that's what animals do. They have lust. Animals are lusty creatures. Tigers, lions, everything else. They get smelling those pheromones, and they just want to do this thing, and they just want to and take it, and just do it. And human beings have got the same reaction, but because we have all sorts of other higher intelligence brain components, we can have all sorts of relationships. But deep down, the body reacts in the same way. It gets excited. The breathing tightens up. The various body parts. We adults, our blood gets engorged into the nipples. Men and women both have that. In various body parts, you get engorged with it, and all of a sudden, you just have this overwhelming need to be together. And it could be with one person. It could be with a lot of people. There's orgies. You just need this sort of satisfaction, and the body has to know that it has compelled itself to do so. That the body has done its duty to try to create more children, to perpetuate the line. Because you don't have to understand, we're all immortal. Our cells are from an immortal entity. Regardless if you believe in creation or evolution, I don't care which one you believe, it's irrelevant to this point. But once it began, there's never been a dead person who gave birth to a live person. Never. Now, science is beginning to tamper with that. Right? Even when they take the cells out of a body, they have to be alive. They've never taken a dead cell. They've never taken dead eggs and dead sperm and put them together. Because it's always been alive, it is immortal. Now, the individual cells or the individual components, us, are not necessarily immortal. And it can die off. But every living thing is from an immortal entity that continues to perpetuate itself. And that we call Gaia inside the world of magic. Gaia has been an immortal entity. It keeps reproducing itself. It reproduces itself as trees, as human beings, as squirrels, some snakes, unfortunately things that are less pleasant like mosquitoes. But because everything has to be born from something else that was alive, once life began, life itself is eternal until it's interrupted. And if ever life ends on earth, then that will be the death of all, life will be, that'll be the end of it. And that'll be the end of love, that'll be the end of lust. Lust is all about the drive for life. Love is making life more comfortable, to make it better. So how do we get to love? Now, from a witch's point of view, I hate to say it, love is one of the biggest manipulative forces in the universe. Both psychological and magical. I hate to say it, if somebody falls in love with you, right, you can get them to do things, can't you? How do we get there? From a witch's point of view, love love is the emotion that is most wanted and the most dangerous. There is actually inside Wicca, just to give you an example of one religion, that you're not ever supposed to cast a love spell on an individual person. Now, there's a story of Russell. He's one of the owners of the Occult Bookstore many years ago. He had a person come in. When people came in, he says, "I would like a love potion." And he goes, "No, you don't." And he would go, "No, you don't." And he says, "Well, love potions are cheap. If you want one, really. But you want, here, how's a potion for confidence? Here's a potion of strength. Here's a potion of this. Oh, no, no, I want this person to fall in love with me." Now, a love potion is a series of ingredients that are put together to change and really create a lust reaction. It's not there. It's to cause a lust reaction. Now, in the old days, they used all sorts of things. Hallucinogenic drugs, menstrual blood. If you get, this is a very Strega thing. If you can get someone to taste your menstrual blood, they fall in love with you. All these things are supposed to get a reaction. I know, isn't that kind of, in modern society, that's kind of disgusting. But no, it's true. And Stregan witches will sometimes put a few drops of menstrual blood into spaghetti sauces. I actually know one who's done that, to bind her groups together. And there's a biochemical reaction when that happens. Now, in the spaghetti sauce, it actually breaks down, and it's more symbolic. But in fact, it gets that sense, your body picks it up. And it becomes, your body reacts like similar to what it does with a virus. It picks it up and says, this is something we have in our system. And it has to decide if it's good or bad for its system. And if it's good for the system, what does it do? It says, if it's good for the system, it starts to hunt it down. And each individual has a distinct smell. Ask any dog. He knows it. And what happens is the body then suddenly picks it up and they look for the scent. I know that sounds crazy, but it's a very sort of scientific answer. Now, people ask me all the time, but magic isn't science. Magic is science. Magic, everything that we have in our scientific world started out as magical subjective. And then becomes scientific objective. A little more than 100 years ago, if you went to your medicine woman, your healing woman, and said, "I've got a terrible headache," she would go, "Okay, here, let me go to the willow tree and scrape the inside of the bark. Grind it down, and let me give you a pill of it, or give you a little bit of, put this in the water or your tea, and this should get rid of your headache." And the doctors went, "That's ridiculous. What could possibly be doing that?" A lot of people were upset about it. One reason why doctors got rid of witches and healing women, because they were competitors. Now we take it every day. Aspirin, natural form of aspirin, is inside willow bark. The inside of the willow bark is natural aspirin. So scientists then found it, distilled it, and give it to us now for all sorts of things. Headaches, help us with our heart, and that sort of thing. But it began as this sort of idea. And so we learned all these sort of things. So love is really about that sort of finding reaction. So when you hear about a love spell, it's really about getting a lust reaction, which forms you to say, "I want this person," and then a bonding, and getting them to bond to you. And one of the things about a love spell, and that Russell used to say, he says, well, once you start a love spell, you may not be able to do this. And he talks about one person who went crazy because they put a love spell on somebody and they wouldn't leave him alone. The person turned into a stalker. Think about it, because what happens is there's a bond that forms. Now, if you're okay with that, and there's lots of lesser ones that you can do so. There's a lot of lesser forms of that, different. It doesn't always happen, but it becomes that they become in love with you. And that sort of thing. And it's forced will. The other thing they say, if you want something more general, the universe is intelligent. One of the best ways of casting a love spell for yourself is to ask the universe to find you somebody. Now, is this magic or psychology? I'll explain. One of the things we do is we take a candle. Pink for romantic love, red for passionate love, and really red, well, we'll leave that to your imaginations. And you dress the candle. What I mean is that you move the candle, you take oil, and you basically take it and rub it on the outside of the candle. Clockwise for positive things, counterclockwise for negative things. Now, if you're in Australia, you do it the other way around. No, and actually they do. Actually, it's one of those things. But basically, if you see, and remember, you're allowed to write your own spells. It's the symbols that work for you culturally, societally. If you think that, the other, and we have been taught left-hand path is dark. Right-hand path is good. And this is where our mindset is. If your mindset's different than that, go ahead and use what works for you. But you have to realize you have a lot of assumptions underneath there. So we tend to tell them clockwise. That's why we tell them to do so. You take that and you put the candle into some sort of holder. And you get ready for it. And then you get some incense. Rose incense is used, very popular. And you begin to burn the incense. Rose is the most common one for it because, again, it's a very strong scent. And why scent is important to all of this is that scent is the most powerful memory enhancement and drawer out that we have. You will remember a smell before you will remember a vision. If you see something, you might not remember it. But if you smell something, believe it or not, it brings more memory to the surface than anything else. It's just one of those little scientific things they're finding out. So you're trying to get the universe to listen to you. You're trying to get your own mind to listen to you. And you light the rose incense, and you get the candle, you light it, and you says, if you want to make it more of a form of prayer, you can say, dear God, dear Goddess, dear whatever. Or you can say, I will find love. Let love find me. I will be open to love. Love, love, love. Love, love, love. Love, love, love. And you just can't keep repeating the word. I will bring love to me. I will be open to love. I will be open to love. And you burn the candle. You meditate it. And even if you say nothing more than, I will bring love to me. I am open to love. I am open to love. Allow the candle to burn down. Allow that energy to form. Imagine that energy coming inside you, the scent coming inside you, filling you up. Feel it filling your lungs and your heart, your body. Imagine it going down to the ground and reaching out through your hands. Imagine that you can feel this sort of energy moving through you. Imagine that it's coming out through your fingers to the top of your head. And then when it burns down, the incense, you just do it and you just go through your life. And then accept things that are happening. The number one thing that happens after people cast spells is they don't believe it can work. So you go down the street, suddenly you go to your job the next day and somebody bumps into you on the train and they go, I'm sorry. And they start a conversation with you. And you go, ooh, okay. And you go like that, but you tend to ignore that. That may have been the person that was for you. And I'm always, and we live in a very fearful society, don't we? We're always afraid of things that are happening. We're always afraid of the other people. So it's harder. But then suddenly, you meet somebody and you hit off, and you don't remember that you casted a spell, but you opened yourself up to it. It's like saying, I want to win the lottery, and then not buying a lottery ticket. Or worse, buying a lottery ticket and never checking it if it won. Believe it or not, there are lotteries in America where somebody's bought a ticket. They just had one roll over in Illinois about a year ago. It was a $7 million lottery. Somebody won it. You have 1 year to claim it. And when they don't claim it, they put it back in the lottery pool. Can you imagine if you bought a lottery ticket for $7 million and never checked it? And all of a sudden, you didn't check it for whatever reason, you lost it or didn't check it, and all of a sudden, you go back and find out that this lottery ticket just spoiled? Be pretty upset, wouldn't you? But people do that with love all the time. Okay. People do this with, all the time. They go out and say, oh yeah, I'm open to it, and then kind of push it away. So, when you cast a spell, you need to be open to it. Now, lust. Lust is a different story. Lust is a power that women and men wield. And the better you can wield lust, the more you can have in your life. Lust is the passion that drives everything. Lust of money, lust. I'm not necessarily saying lust is a good thing. I'm just saying it is a thing. Lust for a car. Lust for objects. Lust for gold. You hear it all the time. In fact, our society preys upon our emotions of lust. And they call it love. eHarmony is the best example of selling lust in the name of love. They are trying to make, and if you ever see their process, it's a 27-page psychological test. And they're trying to match you up. And what they're hoping happens, and if you ever look at their commercials, you'll see this to be true. People who get married on eHarmony usually do so within a year of meeting each other. Lust is not sustainable over the long term. Lust is an immediate, strong, passionate energy. It comes on quick, it stays there for a little while, and then it fades. But if you have that, you can begin to build something else. Love, after the lust is gone, remains. Love is the emotion underneath it that says, I cannot imagine what my world would be like without this person. And if you've transferred it to an object, without that car, or with other things, it doesn't necessarily be it. But in human being terms, I cannot imagine me without the person. Okay, that makes perfect sense to all of you. But lust is the driver to get you in that relationship. Most of the time. And that's what people are selling to you. You gotta remember, people are trying to get into your mind all the time. All the time. They're trying to eat into your mind. Commercials. Do you know why they show so many commercials so often? There's a 20-time rule. If you don't see something 20 times, you don't remember it. You shut it out. And now it's getting worse. So they want to make sure every time you turn around that you see a commercial. And they need to trigger it into your emotion because intellectually you know you don't need that caramel mocha latte at Starbucks. Your body doesn't really care too much if it's house coffee or that caramel mocha latte, except it really loves the sugar. No, really lusts for the sugar. We say we love it, but we really lust for it. Right? But deep down, there isn't that much difference between a house coffee with cream and sugar and this other thing other than the way it's prepared. The way it's prepared makes you more lustful. Okay? You want it. And every day you live with this sort of desire. What's the difference between a Lexus and a Honda? Operationally, what's the difference? They both will take you wherever you want to go. But if you're in the back of a Lexus, you're going to want to have, you're better than everybody. But yeah, it doesn't really do anything else more for you than, say, a tricycle with a motor. If you had a tricycle with a motor, you could do the same thing that you do with a fancy car. Motorcycles are another example. You hear about these sort of, this sort of thing. Because ultimately these are symbols. So love and lust are about symbols as well. Can you hear about it? You hear the joke about men compensating for cars. Cars pick up women. Well, and the reason they say that is because if you show your big fancy car, that means you've got money. If you got money, you have security. If you have security, then they can afford you. You can live in a certain type of luxury. Now, these are all these messages we're getting across. And all these messages are being rammed into every day. Everywhere you turn around, there's advertising. There's advertising in this room. Right now, you're seeing advertising. There's Hill's Brother Coffee over there with the nice big symbols in a red can. Because they want you to know that you're passionate. There's, these posters. Some of them aren't, some of them are that aren't, they're kind of symbolic to show us it. Not so much advertising in here. That's good. But everywhere you go, there's going to be advertising, and that is trying to get into your base emotions. So if you can control those types of thoughts in your head, then you can get better things. You can have more will. You can have what you want. Love, in a magical world, is about giving yourself so strongly to an idea, to a person, that you live with them, and then forming a sort of what they call a magical partnership. My beloved is here, and unfortunately she's not feeling a little bit under the weather, but my beloved is here at the other end. And it was quite unexpected. This is not a relationship that we either one of us anticipated being in. In fact, we had a very exceptionally good platonic relationship for years. So there was there's not a lot of lust, there was not a lot of lust and everything else, and all of a sudden, just one day, it hit, and we've been together ever since. And that's about 2 years now. And what happened was, and for me, to talk about this, is that she did one thing in my life that was there. She called me on, she was the only person in my life that called me on my negative traits, let's call it. Tell me when I was bullshitting. You're bullshitting. You're full of crap. And very few people in my life will ever actually tell me that. And for me, that was something that I didn't have anyone in my life. That made me better, because I couldn't just put out a line out there. And so it made me more honest with her. That felt strong. That suddenly for me was an emotion I wanted to continue. I felt good. It felt great. And I wanted to continue that. And that's what love does. When you get into a good relationship, it makes both of you better because you've got strengths and weaknesses that match up. Working couples are like that. You know, you hear about couples that make money working on it because they have traits that are common together. But you also hear the other term, opposites attract. Well, opposites attract in the sense of that a positive and a negative come together like a magnet. You know, a negative side of a magnet cannot go to a negative side of a magnet. You learn that in science, right? You need that sort of thing. You need a positive side and a negative side. Because they're actually, opposites are not always, in the negative context, means to be so extreme that they cannot get along. In fact, sometimes you need opposites to make things work. So when you hear about opposites attract, it's about finding someone who has the traits that you don't have. If you're really strong and even aggressive, right, sometimes you don't need a partner that's equally as aggressive. In fact, you may want a partner involved with you, you know, that isn't so aggressive. But if that person's thoughtful and thinks and says, honey, I don't think you should go yell at that person. You go, what do you mean? Think about it. Okay. Pull you back. And sort of things. But sometimes, you know, love's all sorts of crazy things, isn't it? That's why it's hard. But that's why they talk about opposites attract. Some people are very compatible. You know, they have very similar traits. That's because each of us are made up so differently. Now I'm going to ask you a quick question. Just give me just a very brief, because I don't want to put anyone who volunteers to do it, what you look for when you look for love. What is a rule of love that you have, that you're looking for? Are you looking, is it beauty? Is there inner beauty, physical beauty? How about you, sir? I'm going to pick on you, okay.
No, that's fine. Creativity. You know, being able to look at things and explore and wanting to, you know, explore different aspects of life in general.
Now, is that something that you do yourself?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so you're looking for that compatibility.
Yes.
And see, and if you have that, then you can start building a better relationship because you share the things that you enjoy. Anyone else? How about you?
I look for like a mutual sense of loneliness.
Okay. And is that something that, as you said, a mutual sense of loneliness? So you're finding somebody that's also lonely. That's a really hard one.
Or like sort of the same understanding.
Of how the world works, you mean?
Of being alone.
Mm-hmm. That's a really hard one because I'll tell you that one's a little bit harder. And I mean, I can understand what you're talking about. And what you really are saying is that somebody who can understand how you feel. Because you could have the sense. Mm-hmm. And that's a really, loneliness is one of the hard ones because that's what we're trying to fill with when we look for love. Mm-hmm. And what happens is that we tend to deal with self-love there. Mm-hmm. I hate Actually, this is one of our opposites. I hate being by myself. Mary Ann there can handle it pretty well. She self-entertains. But yeah, it is that sort of sense of thing. So that's just, again, a mutual thing. And so that's kind of a mutual thing. Yeah, you look for that sort of compatibility because you're looking for someone who has a depth of personality, a depth of understanding, and that's something we look for. Anyone else? What's you? Yes.
For interview.
Okay, what do you mean by interview?
Like somebody who understands they're not gonna jump on anything. They're just gonna be like, okay, I get it, I understand everything you're talking about. Someone kind of like me, gentle, passionate.
Can I warn you about that?
Sure, why not?
Let me warn you about that. You gotta be very careful because you also open yourself up to a lust reaction. Because if somebody agrees with you all the time, you're going to feel lust for them, but you're going to get bored with them at a time. You must have edges. You must have some sort of edge. You must have some sort of grip in there. You have to have occasional conflicts. Because you grow through conflict. Unfortunately, that's a human thing. But don't get somebody so opposite of that. But it's a good thing to want. I mean, you want somebody who understands you. What you're really saying is you want somebody who understands you and is willing to listen to you. Good, but if somebody agrees with you all the time, they're not really listening to you. That's very important. Because love words, because I believe in love, words are magic. They taught a course a long time ago. They found out a girl, if you told, there was a time, they teach classes, literally, was on a television show recently, pickup artist. The fame of a pickup artist is he uses words that people want to hear. Hearing and listening are the two most powerful tools inside love. Lust. Oops. See, I can get them apart. It's really easy to get those two mixed up. In love, listening and compassion are important. But in the pickup game, act like you're listening, listen to what they want to hear, and feed them the line. Okay? It's a really important thing to understand. Meaning, you've been drinking for a while, your guard is down a little bit, and let us say that I heard that you loved art. And I know enough about art to go ahead and say, I like Bach. Actually, have you seen the poster signs for Edward in Munich? Would you like to go to the Art Institute with me and go take a look at that art piece? And you go, yeah. And you start to find this sort of instant rapport. Right? And and then all of a sudden you find yourself going home. Because your body's overridden. Somebody I could fall in love with. Your body's overreacted. Now it needs to fulfill that procreation because you found somebody else. Love turns to lust, lust turns to that. And the pickup artist is based on that whole premise. Looking like the guy or the girl that you could go ahead and fall in love with. And then of course the next morning he turns out to be an ass. He doesn't really care about art, and you never see him again. And then you get hurt. And then you get mad. And then all of a sudden you cut yourself off from love. See, that's the whole big thing about all this. Now, love in the terms of magic. How do you use magic in love? There's a whole bunch of different ways. But the best way to do so is being open to love. And when you love somebody, it changes their lives. Love will change another person. You loving somebody changes their lives. It's a very powerful tool. Loving someone will change their life. Not always good, not always bad, it's just a thing. But if you love somebody and they know of it, then they have to acknowledge it. And if they don't acknowledge it, well, that's a problem. And that's when people go, well, you need to make them do it. And that's when the love potion comes out. That's when the love spell upon the person goes out. You say, universe, I want this person to notice me. And what do we do to do that? So in the witch world, we do all sorts of things. How about we use scents? Scent is old-fashioned. The problem with everybody thinks that witches just control like unseen forces. We control both unseen forces and seen forces. What they call psychological forces and subtle forces. Meaning scent. Rose water. rose perfumes, Chanel No. 5 in modern society. We use these scents because these scents get into the person's things and says, I really like that scent. It triggers me some memory. You know, people joke about rubbing, there's an Arby's commercial that I love that rubs bacon. The girl carries around a sandwich of bacon. And every guy seems to go across the room because they have this positive association. So when you're looking for love, you need to find ways to bring magical energy into your life. And that's your passion, your heart singing. Then you bring in all their symbols of it. So what do you, when you sense it? Yes, I'm going to ask you.
What's that?
When you find what do you love in your life? If you were to suddenly see it, that you would go, oh, I love that color, or what is it? Do you have anything in particular that triggers a love response from you? Could be anything. Food?
Yeah, maybe.
If somebody gave you, if a guy cooks you a very good meal,
Yes.
that gets a love reaction, right? And you start looking at that person differently. And if that person cooks, there's another one. How many people like the color red? Red is the #1 thing, and believe it or not, it's the color of blood. It's the color of menstrual energy. It's a very primitive energy of passion. And what it is that blood and red has always been associated with blood, because those things that are dying love the best. The sweetest moment of a rose is when it begins to die. The sweetest, the World War II was the one that proved it the best. When did the baby boom begin? Right after we let off that nuclear bomb and it threatened the entirety of the human race. When men came back from war and did not want to talk about it, who wanted to bury what had happened in their hearts, they came back fiercely to love their wives, their girlfriends, and they wanted normalcy. Love, ultimately, is normalcy, safety, trigger of it, and they came and they raised the largest generation in the world, which is, I think everyone here is just below that thing, but then they, did it. And then what happened to the baby boomers? They became, did you know that the next generation right after them is one of the smallest generations proportionally in the history of the United States? It was the first generation not bigger than the generation that came before it. Up until that point, every generation was bigger than the last one, and then the baby boomers took it and threw it out the window and said, yes! We want lots of kids. Generation X is only 40 million people compared to the 85 million people for the baby boomers, because they could not form love relationships. They went off, and the children, baby boomer children, were so focused on themselves in a lot of ways that they're having a hard time forming relationships. Divorces, broken families, abortions. Regardless of how you feel this way, Generation X became 40 million people. And this is one of the reasons we're having an economic crisis right now, because those people, because they don't have enough doctors. They don't have enough people to replace them. Love got broken. They didn't nurture it. Now, what happened last year? We had an economic boom. We didn't know we were about to hit a crisis. We had one of the biggest economic booms in history for a while. Last year, 4.2 million babies were born in the United States. The largest number of babies ever born in a year. Mini baby boom. They don't think there's going to be quite so many babies born next year. And what happened was people were really feeling good about themselves. And they were feeling comfortable and safe. And they went out and had babies. Only two times in our lives as a species do we have lots of babies. When we get very, very afraid and are very poor and very broke, and we need as many hands on the till as you can. The small farm, third world farms, the third world countries. You don't know how many babies are going to survive. You need this sort of children to work the fields, that sort of thing. And when we feel very, very good. My life is in order. I think a baby would add to my life. Everywhere else is kind of add, because we get into the sort of, maybe yes, maybe no, maybe I'll wait, maybe I won't. So when we're very wealthy we tend to have babies. Though not nearly as many babies, and when we're very poor and very afraid, we have a lot of babies because we don't know how many are going to survive. In that time of war, the love response becomes a lot stronger. The lust response is even worse because we're afraid. So you have to recognize that. So love is also a reaction to fear. Sounds crazy, right? But how many times do you hear, I'm afraid that I'm going to die alone. I'm going to be alone at the end of my life. So we look for love so we are not alone anymore. Loneliness. And we want children to take care of us. So these are the sort of things that you have to understand. So in magic, being afraid is not acceptable. You have to conquer your fear. Making a relationship out of fear gets you into bad relationships. The abused woman and the abused man, trust me, it happens to men too. We don't talk about it because we have this macho culture. Stay in relationships because they're afraid that whatever they're going to leave, no matter how bad the relationship is, it's going to be worse if they leave it because they'll be alone by themselves. And so they're willing to put up with almost anything. So, and then eventually at some point, a small number of those people go crazy. And they do all sorts of strange. Or worse, they let whatever happens to them happen to them. And they get themselves hurt so bad, someone else has to react. And love is about reacting, so that sort of thing. So, in magic, we use love to bind us and lust to control. Yes, lust is used as a controlling element. If you want to get a raise, you can ask for it. And you should put out ideas for it. I use raises a lot for my lessons because it's one of those things that everybody, because you have a dependence upon your job to make you money. The waitress that wants a tip, she starts mentioning a tip early. But also the waitress who tends to wear the shorter skirt or the better clothes, depending on the restaurant, tends to get better tips because they are looking like they're an object that you should be impressed with. That's a love reaction. That's a lust reaction. It's not really love so much as lust. That sort of, it's hard to explain that sometimes to people, but how often do you say, and rap culture is famous for this, to look good, have the bling on, that sort of thing. To look good, and you want to be dressed well, you want to do things, and that sort of thing. It's because, well, they're peacocks. They're peacocking. And peacocking is a term for looking good, because you want to impress. If you want to get a better raise at work, you have to get sometimes the lust reaction. And you have to find out what they're lusting for. If it's more money, I can make better sales. If they want prestige, if you give me a raise, I'm going to help you look better to your boss. Find out what they want. And you begin to put it into action. Magic is all about controlling your environment, your will. And by controlling your will, what you look like, what you say, what you do, to be bold, to be brave, to the first ones, to be silent, know what to say and what not to say it, are all part of this. And so love spells are all about these things, and so are lust spells. And they're so intertwined, it's very hard to tell the difference. If you want to attract somebody, find out their favorite color. If you want to attract a particular person, find out their favorite color, their favorite scent. And you will see that they will come to you. Be complimentary. Match their tone. What do I mean by that? The person yells a lot, right? So they're yelling a lot. So when they talk to you, da, 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 yeah, I'm really loud. Wow, you're really loud. So am I. I talk really softly. Let me get close to you and talk to you softly too. And the most powerful tool of it is touch. touch them. You want to make a sale? Touch the person. If you want to make an attachment? Touch. Because we have energy in our body that gets conveyed by touch, like it doesn't get conveyed anywhere else. Touch is really important. Massages, rubbing a person's shoulder. Now in today's world, we've gotten very afraid of touch. Because, you know, we got all these rules of sexual harassment and everything else. And they're there for good reason. I'm not going to argue against them. But they are kind of dehumanizing. They're alienating. And so that sort of thing. So touch is an important aspect of it. So when you're trying to draw love into you, you have to be open to it. But when you're going to try to find love, particularly, you have to decide the type of person that you want. And start using your image magic to start conveying your attraction to that type of image.